Welcome to the Church Safety Guys broadcast with hosts James McGarvey, Paul Buckner, and Mike Scully. Together, they make up the Church Safety Guys. Their mission? To inspire, influence, and impact church safety teams. Join us for the next hour as we talk about all things church safety and security. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, join one of our church safety and security communities online, and share this broadcast with your church.
Well, hello and welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. I am one of the hosts, James, and I am joined by my fellow co-hosts, Mike and Paul. How are you guys doing?
Greetings.
Good, sir. How are you guys?
It's been an interesting day.
Yes, you're coming to us from a location that we wouldn't normally see you, so that's kind of fun. At first, I thought that you had some kind of a Zoom-type background. Then I was looking and I went, no, that's a little too good.
It's actually, it's funny. I got kicked out of my office tonight because I've got family visiting from out of town, and they didn't want to put up with me doing the broadcast. And so I went to my church, and I was going to use the safety office, and then the choir is doing a 3-hour practice run today, where they practice is right next to my office. And I figured that the folks at home probably wouldn't appreciate hearing background music of When We All Get to Heaven. I don't know. Maybe they would.
We didn't want to add another S to our title for church safety, security, and singing.
Well, half of our safety team is in the choir, so maybe.
There you go.
I actually know a church that's their biggest problem. That's one of their biggest difficulties is most of their heavy hitters are in their band. And so that's one of the struggles that they have.
He's here all week, ladies and gentlemen. He's
Really?
here all week.
So I say that as a pun, but literally most of the people in their church that carry concealed are in the church band. And I'm like, well, that has its moment, doesn't it?
Guitar cases make it for a great concealment system.
They just have a real guitar in there too.
You guys are ridiculous. So you get to see this is actually, I think it's the background. This is the background in our kids area, but you get to take an inside look. And it's actually the Ohio Buckeyes Stadium, the outside of it, up on the wall. We have it decaled all the way around. I do think there is the Columbus Zoo on here somewhere, but this is the
kids area. Seems fitting.
This is So if you're joining us on YouTube or a podcast platform, welcome. Feel free to click the like and subscribe, and that way you'll be notified of future updates. And I'm gonna move along because the jokes here are just getting worse by the second. So the big thing I want to mention is October 2nd, we're doing the Church Security Essentials Conference, and you can get more details about that on our website. If you haven't signed up and haven't bought a ticket yet for that, you need to do so. Don't walk, run, because we are going through those, and we are running out of them. So you want to make sure. I've actually spoken to quite a few local churches that are interested in bringing their teams in the last couple of days. So those, as we get closer, obviously those tickets are gonna go quickly. And
so the good part is we're trying to keep it a little bit more intimate too than I know there's sometimes for those that haven't seen that we want it to actually be an environment where we get a chance to meet folks, where we get a chance to have conversations, not run from session to session without with quick breaks and all sorts of things going on, and too many people there to truly possibly connect. So that's important, but we will sell out, I think, and so I'd buy your tickets quickly.
Yep, and we will have famous people like John Lee O'Reilly there, and our national speaker, de-escalator extraordinaire. I know he's watching, which is why I'm doing this.
Well, I saw the live video yesterday with a good good set of coverage there for one of his exercises and church that he was helping out. There's a lot of good stuff there.
So James and I were actually discussing tickets and getting me up there. And my plan as of right now is to attend the conference, barring, apocalypse. So I'm pretty stoked about it. And I've had to delay my time in the academy. I'm recovering from COVID. There's no way I can run and do all these things. And it's still up in the air whether they're going to actually hold the class, because their day class, I guess, filled up, but their night class was up in the air. So my wise, lovely bride, who's a nurse, was like, babe, your lungs can't handle it. You can't start in a week or whatever and do that. So I'm actually really excited. It lets me go on a family vacation and it lets me come to this. So we're going to get the ticket in order. And so I don't know if that scares people away from the conference or they might actually want to attend, but I do plan on being there.
It scares me away from the conference. So if y'all are watching, no, never mind. You know what? It'll be the second time that the three of us hopefully have been together, and barring any unseen events, and it'll definitely be a good opportunity of fellowship. And just to reemphasize what Mike said earlier, we have talked to a lot of churches about bringing their teams in and that sort of thing. And the whole point of this is to really try and fellowship and set up a one-day conference where you get fed mentally, spiritually, physically a little bit. And the idea is that, we have the opportunity to meet some of you folks and fellowship with you and,
absolutely,
really just take a break. I hate conferences, and I've been to a few, and I've spoken at a few, and I hate conferences where it feels like, like Mike said earlier, it's one thing after the other. You got to run. With this particular one, actually, Mike and Jason and I were going over the schedule on Friday, and we've intentionally designed breaks for networking and pauses where, not only can you meet folks, but we're going to be around. I'm not sure that you'd really want to meet us, but all of the speakers are there, and we have John Riley with General Response is coming down. Dr. Brian Patterson, he works for Columbus State as a psychologist. He's coming to talk about mental health, and he wrote a book that we have on our website in regards to energizing men and basically helping men refocus with a biblical warrior attitude. And so I'm really looking forward to it. I talked to him, and I said, I really want to energize people. I want you to be able to get enthusiastic and energetic with part of your session, because we all know how tired, ministry can get sometimes with doing everything, and we're always running, and so I just want it to be a day of rest and relaxation with, some approachable, great folks. And, it'll be a fun time. I'm looking forward to it. Always.
Do we have any of the? I thought we had a few left of the VIP tickets. Yes. Or are those gone? Okay.
Yeah, no, we still have a few, but I will tell you, I spoke to those are going the fastest because it's an early entry. You actually get a CSG book, and then you get a challenge coin for the event that we picked out specifically for the event to encourage you, and you get a chance to have kind of a few minutes to chat with us and all of the speakers before we go into the conference.
Nice.
And get their own seat first. So If you have a preference to sit in a certain spot, we know Mr. Buckner does. But if you do, that early.
So I just thought of this. Here's a safety conference for you, right? You walk in the conference and everybody's got their back to a wall. That cracks me up because I'm thinking, so how do I handle this when I set out? Because one of the pastors asked me how I was going to set up the room, and I'm like, how do you set up a room of safety people?
Theater in the round.
Oh,
A round table, and there's like mirrors on walls where we can be checking everything at the same time. Oh my
We
God.
put the round tables on turntables so they slowly turn so everybody gets the best seat.
Everybody brings
oh
it to
my
the sword,
goodness.
lays it down, and faces anyway.
So if you're part of that, so from 7:45 to 8:15 is the meet and greet. You get a chance to hang with us for a little bit, and then at that point, from 8:15 to 8:30, you get to pick your seat in our fellowship hall, and then after that, at 8:30 forward is the general admission, and we start everything at 9. So definitely, don't. Like we've said, don't hesitate. Grab your ticket. Share the website link with your team. And there's a lot of there's definitely a lot of folks that we've been talking to that are interested in, and the tickets are going quickly. So you don't want to miss that. Plus, you can get if Paul comes, you can get his signature on stuff too. So he'll sign books for you.
Right? Hey, I didn't write this, but sure.
Well, I mean, you've helped with War Ready. I mean, you helped with War Ready. You can sign that one, maybe.
I throw in some suggestions and like spoiled fruit. So, so should we probably bring our guest in now?
Okay, so we all know that coming back from being sick, that Paul hasn't lost his ironic and weird sense of humor.
No.
So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest in. So our guest tonight is Dr. Brady Stevens with Centurion College, and he has, over the last few weeks, has become a good friend of mine, and he does a lot with church safety. So I wanted to take the time to bring him in. So thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking the time to hang out with our craziness this evening.
It's my privilege. Thank you for having me.
So I know a lot about your background. You've been in law enforcement and you're in ministry, and I think you're probably one of the few people that has almost as much stuff on his plate as I do on a regular basis. And so I just want to give you the opportunity, for our listeners' sake, if you could just kind of tell your background and walk us through, how you went from being a police officer to a pastor, and we can kind of go from there.
There are a lot of former police officers that are in the ministry. You would be surprised at how many of us there are out there. A lot of former pastors that have gone into police work as well, but probably more the other direction. My start in police work came very early. I was 18 when I started as a deputy sheriff in Wood County, West Virginia, and I believe, at least in modern history, I was the first 18-year-old hired. Before that, the law required you to be 21, and there may have been some time in way back when that wasn't the case, but at least in modern history, I was the first 18-year-old hired, and I worked there for a period of time, 5 years or so, and I finished my full-time law enforcement service on the Parkersburg Police Department, with a total of 13 years in both. The thing that got me interested in this to begin with was when I was 16, I joined the local fire department that had just organized a volunteer fire department, Waverly Volunteer Fire Department in West Virginia, and found that this whole adrenaline rush thing was it got a hold of me at age 16, and if there were lights and sirens to be around, I definitely wanted to be there. And so I didn't really care what color the lights were or where we were going. If it was something that was going to give me an adrenaline rush, then I wanted to go. But at 18, I was able to get on the sheriff's department, and I found that it was something I really enjoyed for a while, and then after a while, I didn't enjoy it very much. But now, all these years later, I sure wish I was young enough to do it again. I would love to do it again. I even after I left full-time law enforcement, and never left it very far. I served as chaplain for different departments. I left to go into the ministry when I was 31. I had already started pastoring a small church part-time while I was still a Parkersburg officer, and we moved to North Carolina and took a church down in Denver, North Carolina, which is about 30 miles north of Charlotte, and near Lake Norman, great fishing. So why I ever left there is, well, it was a big mistake. but I was a chaplain while I was there for Newton Police Department in Newton, North Carolina. Later served as a chaplain in Wilmington, North Carolina when I was a pastor there. Did a little bit of teaching there. Wrote a booklet, Wearing the Badge Without It Wearing You Down, that ministered to police officers. And later, when we moved back to my home community here in Parkersburg, I worked in the Division of Corrections for 5 years, 4 years of it, being doing inmate disciplinary hearings, sort of like the judge in the prison. If they get wrote up, and you hear the evidence, make a determination of guilt or innocence, a sentence to whatever appropriate sentence you believe to be the case. And also worked for 3 years as a court bailiff part-time with the Wood County Sheriff's Department. Taught criminal justice at the Ohio Valley University as an adjunct for 3 semesters. Taught inmate discipline and ethics at the Corrections Academy here in West Virginia. One time, had one chance to teach at the West Virginia State Police Academy, where we had all gone for our basic training. Had a chance to teach a history class there one time, and that was about 4 years ago, something like that. And the staff member that arranged for me to come and do that transferred away from the academy. So if anybody's got any clout that can get me back there to teach that history class again, I would love to do it. I had a ball doing it. But anyway, that kind of covers my my law enforcement experiences and history and so on. I had the privilege of growing up in a Christian home, and got saved when I was 14. And so my entire career, it was all about Christ first, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the chance to grow up in a Christian home, and I'm even more thankful, I think, that I'm 64 years old, and I had both parents until this year. Just lost my mother this year, and to have such great parents and to have them this long is just an amazing privilege. My dad, we still have my dad, and in good health, and so that's kind of in a nutshell. And I think when I say that's in a nutshell, that's probably where Paul comes in with something that, something about being not in a nutshell or something. I just wanted to give him that opening if I could give him that opportunity.
Sorry, I'm not quite 100% on my game.
Okay.
I really think it's cool because you came about to a chaplaincy and then into ministry, and it's so hard to find faith with a badge. I chaplain, and I've done it for about 10 years, and I talked to a department the other day that 2 of their officers dealt with the death of a woman during a wreck. And after they'd handed the body off to the coroner, they got a call, and the report doubled because, unfortunately, there was no way for them to know she was pregnant. And these are things that the average person just doesn't know happens. So it's really hard to keep a heart of ministry around firefighting with a badge. And then not only to come, you were fortunate to grow up with it. So obviously there's that, but to maintain that through that situation. So many people, their schedules and life and stress and not knowing how to deal with things. And then not only did you have that heart, but you turned to a chaplaincy, which James has that experience, and myself, and then Mike has got a ministry where he's kind of tied to a police department, but I think he's going to do some ministry around that. And then to actually go to the pulpit, it's really cool to me to see your journey.
And it didn't seem like an unnatural journey either. I was talking to a friend of mine that has, in fact, I've known him since I was really young. His dad was my pastor when I was, 7 or 8 years old. He's about 9 years older than I am, and he had a career as a trooper, state trooper in West Virginia, and then while he was still a trooper, he began pastoring churches, and he retired from the state police and pastored full time. Then he's retired from that too. And when he hears somebody express surprise at that transition, it surprises him, because if you're someone who's done that, it seems like a very natural transition. It seems like the same things that motivated you to become a police officer. If you were a Christian and the service of the Lord was the primary thing in your life, and that led you into police work, then it doesn't seem at all unnatural that it would just lead you to another avenue of service. And I know a lot of former, both retired and just simply separated law enforcement officers that went into the ministry. One of my closest friends is a retired Indiana state trooper, and he pastors a church. While he was a trooper, he did a lot of evangelistic work, crusade type things. There are a lot of us that do that, and it's not such a drastic transition, really. If you have a heart for people, you have a heart for souls, it's just another way of service.
For sure. And I think it's interesting, and it's funny now that you said that, Paul, just the interesting piece that all four of us actually, and that's pretty unique, all four of us have kind of gone through that, from the extent of, we've either helped with law enforcement, we've worked with law enforcement, we're chaplaining. I mean, I was a disaster chaplain with the Red Cross for probably about 5 years.
Yeah.
And, I think it's natural, like you said, Brady, I agree with you. I think it's natural that people that are of the mindset that you want to help somebody, maybe that's what kind of pushes them toward church safety, right? Because in a sense, you're also trying to stand in the gap and trying to help people and be on the go and as helpful as possible. So, I mean, we've found a lot of, and I'm sure there's plenty of listeners that would agree, but over the years, we've found a lot of folks that have either public safety experience or, military experience gravitate towards church safety, just because they like helping people and they want to serve in that capacity. So,
I think sheepdogs are going to sheepdog. It's amazing to me. I started referring to the law enforcement, firefighter, EMT, paramedic group as my tribe. And I meet people, and the stories are similar and the hearts are similar, and there's varying degrees of personalities and all kinds of things. But the sheepdog tribe are the people that run towards the danger, not away from it. And I have a friend that he's like, I don't do that. He said, when there's a problem, I run away, and I run away quite happily. And some of us are wired to go the other way. And I love that tribe. And I joke that I know some of the nicest, most dangerous men you would ever know. And I tend to collect them as friends. I love that ministry, and I love seeing church safety, and that's, I think, a great segue as we go, perhaps. I love seeing church safety really coming into its own. and the sheepdog tribe really being able to establish itself as a ministry element that's there to protect the flock. So how's that for a segue over to weather from the news desk?
Mike, did you want to add something before we go to break?
No, I think it's a great transition there, Paul. And I think you're right. It's one of those things where you try to look at who is equipped and what do you have to try to equip your team correctly. And sometimes that brings those folks with military or law enforcement background. And honestly, it's not just the tactics or what it's a mindset that they have. It's that they've already turned on that protector mindset. They've already gone through and rehearsed in their mind the idea of running toward the fire, of actually looking at that. It's harder to teach that. It's harder to acclimate somebody who perhaps has joined a team, a ministry from church, and try to bring them through those. We can teach them tactics all day long. We can teach procedure all day long. We can send them to the range. We can send them to CPR training. We can go to first aid. But it's harder to get them to cross that threshold. And you can see it. I mean, we know when it happened for us is a switch gets thrown. And all of a sudden we go from that point in our life to that other point in our life. And that switch is thrown in our brain. And it's now, you can't go back. You can't turn it off at that point. It's now been permanently thrown and you've broken that glass and you're on the other side. And so I think that's the big difference, is looking at how you can reap the benefit of those that bring those procedure and tactics and law enforcement and military background into a ministry environment, which again, that's an interesting casserole, if you will. It's ingredients that when you're trying to bring together a church, a ministry, military and law enforcement, and really hardened response into a soft or gentle response, pun intended. Okay, that is a hard mix sometimes. And making that work, making that casserole or really meld and stew together so that it ends up with a good output and a good taste, if you will, a good flavor, that's not easy. And that's what we talk about really every week.
It's not, and I'm going to jump in there because there's a gold nugget, I think, to unpack. And that's that, you touched on something that honestly I haven't thought of. I've written about it, but I haven't thought about it. And that's that it's far easier, and there may be some folks that disagree with me or argue the point, and that's fine. But to me, it almost seems like, I'll preface it this way, it's far easier to take someone that has no experience but a gentle heart and a gracious attitude and train them tactically and go the other direction than it is the reverse of what you just said, to take someone that has been hardened to an extent by military or law enforcement. And that's a challenge. And I don't say that, I work with both daily. I don't say that to discredit anyone, but I do think to an extent over time, I've worked with law enforcement. I've worn a uniform, I've done what, Mike, what you're doing now and what Paul's done in the past. So in small community, et cetera. And I think I can see easily how sometimes it would be easy for folks to kind of lose that ministry focus of, okay, here's a disruptor in the church. I'm going to grab him and I'm going to throw him out. That's because I need to be rough because, that's what the point is, and not.
That's it, or arrest it. That's a common conversation I have because that's that world. And I love it when I have conversations with police officers and this is back to your world, Brady. I had a conversation with a police officer recently. He got super excited. He goes, Paul, I actually got to help somebody. And I said, really? And he said, and he doesn't mean I helped someone on the side of the road or out of a bad situation or away from a domestic they're going to go right back into. He's like, I literally got to help somebody that was their kids had moved out. They kind of made their kids like a little god in their life. That woman went into an emotional tailspin and she had to go be involuntarily committed to the psych ward. And he was taking her up there. And instead of just being like, get in, sit down, shut up, let's go, which happens, you can get burned out or not care. As they were driving up there, he started to speak some life into her. I call it verbal CPR. Obviously, he's a Christian. So as a believer, she's talking to him and I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's like, maybe God's going to use this and you're going to get to help other people. Well, she's a couple weeks later, she runs up to him, and I'm going to hit this 100 miles an hour because we're headed into break. But she runs up to him, and she's like, if it wasn't for COVID, I'd hug you. And he's like, why? What's going on? What happened? And she tells him that in the psych ward, the psych nurse is mistreating her, like being very cruel and speaking down to her and treating her like garbage. And finally, she turns to this woman and goes, why are you like this? And the woman broke down and cried. Now, here is a psych ward patient talking to a psych ward nurse and talking about God. This woman had lost her way. She found her way in a psych ward and was ministering before she got out of the psych ward. Only God can do that. And it gives me goosebumps. And he's like, I got to help somebody long term today or the other day. So anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, you're on mute.
To tie it back really quick as we go to break, I think and we'll talk more about this after the break, is the educational piece of this, is that to make that stew work, to make that team work, is about equipping and training them properly. And there's multiple ways to do that. But we'll go to break and we'll come back and talk a bit more about that.
Yep. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
With over 50 years of experience with religious and nonprofit organizations, Thomas Alexander Insurance and Associates understands that your congregation is different from a traditional business. We're here to fulfill your needs, coming to you while creating a personal plan for your budget and size. From your local community to around the globe, we are advocates for you. Thomas Alexander Insurance and Associates, your partner in service.
The worst has happened. Evil has invaded the sanctuary. Lives were ended, and the life of every surviving member of your church has changed forever. There will be funerals to attend. The grieving and the counseling will go on for years to come. You may even lose church members, especially if your pastor was killed during the attack. But what if I told you that all of this could have been prevented with the proper training? That your church could learn how to secure its campus and how to see the signs of an attack before it happens. At Shield Force International, we will teach you the skills you need to protect your church, to protect your children, to mitigate and even eliminate would-be threats to your church body, all before it happens. We can no longer pretend that evil doesn't exist, or that churches aren't targets. Attacks against churches and pastors are on the rise. Call or visit us online for a free consultation.
Welcome to the Church Safety Guys broadcast.
Church Safety Guys is a nonprofit organization dedicated to help inspire, influence, and impact church safety and security teams. We are about all things church safety and security, which starts with a ministry mindset and a servant's heart. We're protectors, guardians, ambassadors, and shepherds. We help church and place of worship safety and security teams all over the United States through our broadcasts, online communities, conferences, trainings, resources, and products. Help us reach more churches in impactful ways by considering becoming a monthly ministry partner. $2, $5, $20 a month will help us continue to provide these resources.
All right, welcome back to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. If you've just joined us on YouTube or another platform, podcast platform, later on, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a subscribe button. Go ahead and click that, and then you'll be notified of incoming broadcast events, et cetera, that we post. And you can always visit our website at churchsafetyguys.com. So our guest tonight is Dr. Brady Stevens. He's with Centurion College, and we're just talking to him about church safety, and we've kind of turned into the education piece of it. But I want to go back. Something kind of stuck out with what was said earlier that happened today, and we had a gentleman come in, and he was a pretty wily guy, real thin. Had a ball cap on, just looked kind of odd. Apparently we've been trying to focus on key individuals through our service as we're trying to educate them on awareness and make folks more aware. And so I talked to the gentleman. He came in and he grabbed a seat, and my phone started blowing up. Well, apparently he had walked into our sanctuary, and he had sat down in like two aisles, like the second aisle from the back of the sanctuary. And then before the music was done, he jumped up and he starts jogging towards the stage and where the pastors are. And our senior pastor was out today with his family because he's dealing with some health issues. And so he jogs and he goes all the way down to like two rows before the stage and plops down. And so my phone, I'm sitting in the back, and my phone starts blowing up, and everybody's like, "Hey, have you seen this guy? What's going on? What's he doing?" So he sat there. Well, when the invitation was given towards the end of the service, I went around and I came in from the side. Because I saw him from a side door, because I saw him jump up and he bolts towards the stage to talk to the pastor. And when I say bolt, I mean, this guy is quick. He was like there. So I walked through that side door and I cut across the seats, and I went to grab him basically. And I don't think he even noticed me behind him, but the pastor was standing to the left of him. He was here, and I scooted up behind him and basically was ready to armbar him and move him out because I didn't understand what he was doing or what was going on. So I'm trying to do all of that, and I've got guys responding, and I hear, of course, it's during one of my favorite worship songs by a worship leader that I really like. So I'm like trying to sing and be incognito while I'm getting ready to try and pull this guy out of the service with 3 other safety team members being indiscreet around me. So I kind of lean forward. This guy leaves the room, and I kind of lean forward to the pastor, who was the one that had been preaching. And he kind of glanced over his shoulder, and I kind of looked at him and kind of tipped my head, and he just kind of nodded like, we're good here. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I follow the guy. I find out later that he had been in the senior pastor's youth group years ago, and he's from Missouri. His parents live in Columbus, so he came up. I think his dad passed away, and he was coming to the funeral. But he stopped in to see the senior pastor. And where I'm getting with all of this was when he was here as a youth, going through the youth ministry, and I know it had to be close to 15 to 20 years ago. There was we had no safety. We had no policies, no procedures you could do whatever you want. And I kind of watched this guy, and it was interesting to me because he still had that mentality. Like, he walked into our kids area without stopping. He's single. He doesn't have anybody with him. And he walks into the kids area and he's like, "Oh, wow, you guys have really changed it." So it wasn't like he was intentionally bad, but he was disregarding, how we have things. We have a very secure kids area. We pay attention to that stuff. And what was interesting to me was everyone around me's response. And, we have harped on education. We've pushed it for a long time to say, be aware, be focused on what's going around you, and that sort of thing. And it was interesting to me because the checks and balances that we had in place, people reacted and responded to that. And, I had a few people say, "Well, why didn't you just let the guy look? I mean, he's going down memory lane and he's just trying to do his thing." And I said, the reality with this is that, we've changed, right? In 15 years, we've developed policies and procedures to address that sort of thing. So it's interesting to me. But from the education piece, we'll jump back into that. So Brady, what are the programs that you guys offer at Centurion, and how did you go from being a pastor to running into a college?
Well, I was directing citywide crusades for Clyde Dupin Ministries out of North Carolina 16 years before we started the college. The college we started 7 years ago. And I was staying at a motel up there, and each night I would usually walk around the motel lot and down over the hill to the street and back up and pray as I walked. It was exercise and prayer at the same time. And it was during one of those evenings that I felt led by the Lord to start a Bible college. It was a clearer thing to me than even my call to pastor was. And, I spent almost 30 years as a pastor, but this call to start the Bible college was just really distinct. I really couldn't tell you the date and the place and the time that I knew I was called to be a pastor. That was more of a gradual thing. But I although I don't know what the date was, I remember specifically the place and the moment that God led me to start a Bible college. I had no idea that it would be so heavily involved in church security because, that's 24 years ago, something like that. Nobody was thinking about church security very much 24 years ago. But I had several obstacles that jumped in the way of that. And it took me, I wasn't being disobedient for the next 16 years. It just took me that long to get to a place where the doors opened for us to start this college. And we started in 2014. But when as far as the security, how I got involved in that, something happened, and I don't really remember what it was. It caused me to be concerned about the security of my own church, this church I was serving as a pastor. And so I had I developed a class. It was a 1-hour class then for my own church on how to respond in the event of an armed attack or an armed threat.
Nice.
And so I wrote the outline for it. I had 2 other pastors in my church that were they were at the time, I think they were in my church. They had been in my church and they've been back in the ministry and so on outside of the church. But anyway, 2 pastors who were former police officers. One was a Parkersburg police officer with me that's currently a pastor, and the other was a former Washington, D.C. officer and Pennsylvania state trooper. And he was my associate for 4 years here. And so I ran my program by both of them and had a lot of good information from them, I made changes based on that. And then I taught it to my own church. And I liked it a lot. So I called a friend of mine that pastors a church an hour up the road from us in New Martinsville. And I offered to come up, or ask him to come up and see if I could try it out on a congregation that wasn't my own. And so he let me come up and teach it there. And I really liked the program. And so I made it available to all of my pastor friends, and neither one of them was interested. That's another place you could jump right in there, Paul, if you're on your best game. Anyway, I did offer it to anybody that wanted it, and really nobody was interested at that point. I'm going to guess that was probably about, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, maybe a little longer. The thing that started my phone ringing on this subject was two things. One was the attack on the church at Charleston, South Carolina. That got everybody's attention, it seemed. And about the same time, people were seeing what ISIS was doing overseas, and pastors began to think, this is a concern that we need to be prepared for here. And so I started getting some calls there from pastors that were interested in this. And then as time passed and we started the Bible College, then I brought that program under that umbrella, began to use. I first started to use it just as a method to get some exposure for the Bible College, but then it became part of the program of the college. It's a 2-hour program now. It is something that I used to offer to neighboring churches, neighborhood, within a county or so. I would go there for whatever they wanted to give the college, and didn't actually put a fee on it. If I had to travel, stay overnight, then I would put some kind of a minimum fee on it. And then about maybe a year or so ago, a little less than that, we developed a partnership with the United States Concealed Carry Association a little more than a year ago, and COVID kind of stopped everything for a while. And then when it started back up, the arrangement that we had with them was such that under most circumstances, we can now offer it to churches free. There are some circumstances where we can't, but in most cases, almost every case, we can offer this class to churches without cost to the church at all because of our partnership with them. I never dreamed when I started into the ministry that there would be any interest, that there would be a need for this. I had no idea that this would be something that would be so much a part of my ministry in the future. But it is a large part of the ministry of Centurion Bible College. And one of the things that we do at the Bible College as a matter of policy is that we never turn anybody away because of money. And so this program has pretty much funded the school and made that possible. And at the same time, not costing the churches anything. So it's been a win-win, all the way around. I'd like to mention something about the training aspect of this. It's a difficult thing to train a church in an active shooter response because, at schools or at workplaces, you have pretty much the same people there every day. And you can also mandate that they attend these classes if you have someone come in and teach active shooter training. But with a church, you have a different, especially with an active church, you have a different group of people. It's forever changing. And who's going to be there this Sunday is going to be different than the people that were there last Sunday. And in addition to that, you can't mandate that your church attenders attend this class. And so I found that if a pastor really gets behind this and really pushes it for everything in him, probably about the best we're going to do is get maybe 30% of the Sunday morning crowd out for this class. It's just something that some people just are not going to come to. So you're not going to have a really well-educated congregation because of those difficulties. In addition to that, you can only fortify a church so much. Some businesses you can make very secure, schools you can make very secure, and you can get by with that, and people expect a lot of that. But with a church, it's hard enough to get people to come to it anyway, and if they have to go through a really difficult security program to get to the church, and it's just going to be very discouraging. And so I think it's been helpful to me to have both the law enforcement background and the security background that helps me understand what's needed. But I also have the ministry background that helps me understand we just can't build a fortress here, and we can't do business here in security the way you can in a business or in a school or someplace like that. And I think that's something that a lot of pastors are afraid of. They're afraid to bring in someone to teach this type of thing because they're afraid that it's going to scare their people. Even the thought that we need to have training like this, they're afraid that some of that's going to scare their people. And so sometimes the pastors are just nervous about dealing with the whole program, so they sort of ignore it. And sometimes it's to their peril. This morning there were a couple of people shot in Mobile, Alabama. Nobody was in a church. Nobody died there. I don't believe anybody is serious, is deadly. Has a life-threatening injury, but it happens all the time now, and we only really hear about the big ones that's happening so often. But we can't put our head in the sand anymore. I mean, we have to be prepared to deal with this because that's the world we live in now. But we also have to recognize that a church is a different problem to deal with security wise than really anything else that I can think of.
Yeah. And I appreciate honestly, the way you said that, because I think all three of us agree with you 100% that it seems like, how do you, that's a question that we get a lot. Like, how do you train people? How do you be tactical and have a solid group of volunteers, but at the same time, not scare away the leadership that you're overthinking something or possibly, making something bigger than it really is. There's a fine line balance with that. That church shooting you're talking about in Alabama today, it looks like it was actually the result of a domestic between a husband and a wife. And, that's something else that we certainly are starting to see more of in the church setting that we have to be prepared to address too. So, Mike, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think to your point there, James, I think it's a maturity piece. In other words, our teams have to continually educate, continually train. And just like I talked about earlier about balancing your team members, whether that be they're coming as lay people, if you will, and with no security background or no military or police, but you also have to balance your team as a whole. And what does that program look like within your church? Because you have a lot of folks that frankly are not going to understand its role. Okay, it's hard enough sometimes. We talk with folks all the time how they're trying to convince their pastor to have a security program or a security team at church and what that looks like. But then you also look at those that the unchurched, and they see church security as a term, and they think mall cop. They think this sort of, and why does that go in church? Because A, they don't understand church. B, they don't understand security. So when they try to put the two together and they start hearing church security, they're going to get it wrong. So I think we have to manage perceptions as leaders of teams. And that perception is, we have to manage what our perception is internally of our team, how it looks like to our pastors or oversight pastors and leadership, how it looks to other ministries, and then most importantly, how it looks to folks coming in. Brady, you mentioned it earlier. It's hard enough to get people to come in through those doors. We got to make it easy enough, but also hard enough at the same time for the wrong person to get in, because we're at least observing, we're at least posting people in the right positions, and we're educating those folks so that everybody's not green and turning over all the time, because at that point, then you may as well not have a team. Because if they're going to let the people right through or miss it, or worse, they're going to go put hands on somebody when it could have been just a verbal conversation, you're better off without that person at that point, because sometimes having a team can be a liability as well. So I think the whole point is balance and bringing that maturity up with your team over time to understand that you're not going to go 0 to 60 the minute you launch a new team. And just because you read 7 books, hopefully 6 of them ours, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can immediately get to that level tomorrow. And don't expect to, because you're going to set yourself up for failure and expectation games. It takes educating yourself continually and a program evolution over time that says this year, this is our goal. This is what we're going to try to stretch our team to do. Next year, we're going to stretch our team a little bit more. Are you going to be immediately ready? No. Is there risk there? Absolutely. But you have to bite off what you can chew a bit at a time.
Things change from state to state as far as the laws that we have to deal with, requirements as far as concealed carry and things like that. But one of the things that I hear often, pastors and mostly pastors that I hear this from is, I just don't think that we want people carrying guns in our church. And first of all, there are security teams that do not carry guns in the church, so that's not necessarily that's not necessarily a prerequisite to whether you have a security team or not. But in some states, in my state of West Virginia, in the state of Ohio, right next door to us, in the state of Kentucky, North Carolina, other places that where there's it's very easy to either get a concealed carry permit, or in the case of West Virginia, you don't even have to have one. The fact is, pastors should understand there are people carrying guns in his church right now, his or her church right now, and so instead of ignoring this and saying, I don't really want these people carrying guns in the church, makes me nervous. I'm telling you, they're carrying guns in your church, so let's deal with that, and let's train them and make sure that it's being done right, make sure that it's being done by the right people, make sure that there is some control and some dealing with it, rather than just pretending it's not there and having all kinds of armed people in the church that have no idea what to do in the event that there is some kind of an attack.
For sure. Paul, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, two quick things, because this is a drum that we beat. It's a dead horse that receives vicious kicks. Train. And I in a video many moons ago, I coined a phrase, semper disciplina, the concept of always training or always be training. And it's become part and parcel of several of our sayings. But the idea is you never reach your goal. If you have the right mindset, I think there's two things, and anybody that has listened to me before has heard me say this, but you never know it all. And you will never find yourself in a life or death situation where you go, gee, I wish I hadn't trained this much for this. And that goes back to what you said about Virginia, where more and more of our states are going constitutional carry, which I'm in love with, except with great power comes great responsibility, to quote Stan Lee from Marvel Comics. But you'll probably never hear that happen again. But what I mean by that is, yes, we have this incredible right of free speech. Yes, we have this incredible right of, we don't have to put up with illegal search and seizure. Yes, we have this incredible Second Amendment, and that means we can carry a gun. But that should scare us half to death if we have a clue about what can go wrong. And we should train. Training should be cool. Which, if we can ever get there before the Lord returns, training is the most important thing we can do. And if we can develop a culture within our safety team ministries that trains, I'm going to do one follow and then I'm done. I know a chief of police that came into a department that had a medium fitness level. He walks in the door, he's in his 40s, and the guy is buff. walks in the door from a professional department in a big city, takes over a smaller city's department. Within 6 months, everybody's got a gym membership. Within 6 months, people are laying off the beer. They're laying off the sugar, laying off the power drinks and crap. And that department became very fit. And it became he developed a standard, and then he started shooting competitively some. It changed the face of that department. And I guess what I'm saying is, to land that plane, the leadership that we offer, whether it's bottom-up leadership or top-down leadership within our church and within our church safety team, has an enormous impact on the culture of that team. Anyway, enough said.
Yeah. I mean, you're spot on. So I would love to continue on, but for sake of time, we're pretty much there. We're out of it. If I will say this, if someone's interested, Dr. Brady Stevens, he does actually go to different churches in the area and talks to them. And you're more than welcome to contact him if you're interested in having him come out and do his presentation, which is really good, and it covers a lot of stuff. But I've watched the video of it, and I really like it. So it is a really worthwhile thing. And maybe it's the thing that you need to have someone come in and kind of chat with your pastor about, the importance of having a safety team or security team. All of us, honestly, all of us on the broadcast have no problems doing that. So if you are in that boat and you feel like you need to reach out to somebody, please feel free to contact us, and we'd love to help you as much as we can. Paul, do you want to go ahead and close us in prayer, and we'll call it a night?
Very, very quickly, one of the things that you made me think of, James, just now is many times as churches, we receive wake-up calls. And I have told churches, because guys are really frustrated that nobody takes safety seriously. And I'm like, pray if God gives you a wake-up call, to gentle one, because I've seen churches receive terrifying wake-up calls, and then bam, they start a safety team. But you got to start, Mike, somewhere, and you got to get your feet wet, and then you got to get out to where you're swimming in the deep, in the deep water. So I actually know people that actively pray that nobody gets hurt, but that God give their church a wake-up call. And, Jason posted that thing the other day where there was kind of a wake-up call at his church. So unless there's any comments, Brady, anybody, I'll close us in prayer. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord God, I thank you for friendships, for new friendships, for people like Brady who've been doing this a long time, and they aren't hiding their light under a bushel. They're literally taking that light, ministry-wise, training-wise, experience-wise, Lord God, and they're sharing it. They're sharing it back into the faith community, into the church community. I thank you for that. I thank you for tonight. I ask that you'd help it to reach the right ears. Lord God, there's amazing things coming down the line that you're doing, and I thank you for them in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So next week, actually, just as a heads up, I'll switch things out here real quick. And next week, we are actually going to be in season 6. We'll be starting that up. And we will be talking about a couple of different things coming up. But just so you all know, we have a couple of new resources coming out, and that information is on our website. So feel free to visit churchsafetyguys.com. And if you have any questions or we can be of any help to you, feel free to reach out. Don't forget, check out the Church Security Essentials Conference. Get your ticket, reserve that spot. And we're getting excited about that and looking forward to seeing you guys. So take care, have a blessed week, and we will see you next time. So take care. Have a good night.
Thank you for joining the Church Safety Guys broadcast. We hope that you found it informative, and we appreciate your feedback. Looking for ways you can help us reach more churches? Share our broadcast with your teams. Consider becoming a monthly ministry partner. Like and share our page and join the discussion in our Facebook groups. Visit our website at churchsafetyguys.com for other great resources. Remember to keep a servant's heart a mindset of ministry, and semper disciplina. Always be training. Have a blessed week.